Sora ran without stopping. He knew that if he slowed down even once, he would die. He kept firing his magic handgun behind him. It shot bullets made from mana, but none of them landed. The monsters chasing him were too fast. They were called Furgles, four-legged creatures with no eyes and no nose. Their faces were almost nothing but huge mouths. One was bad enough. Now, there were hundreds. His class trip bus had been dragged into another world. There, a beautiful queen had asked the students to fight for her kingdom. She said the people of that world could not battle outside the barrier protecting the country, so the summoned students had to do it instead. They were promised weapons, magic, special skills, and one wish each if they saved the kingdom. They were also told that if they died there, they would simply return to their own world. At first, it had sounded like a fantasy adventure. Now Sora knew it was a nightmare. As he ran, he shouted for the other two students who had been sent to the front line with him. Neither answered. The truant girl who barely came to school was gone. The silver-haired delinquent was gone too. The three weakest outcasts in class had been used as bait, and Sora was the only one still alive. He still did not know how it had reached this point. He only knew the result. He had been betrayed. Then his phone rang. That should have been impossible. There was no signal in that world. Still, the call connected. Sora answered at once and heard the voice of his childhood friend. She sounded as relaxed as ever. He begged for help. He told her two students were already dead, and he would be next unless someone came now. She refused. Her transfer skill used too much mana. Saving him was not worth the cost. Sora broke down and demanded the truth. He asked why the weakest three had been thrown away. He asked why no one had answered his calls earlier. He asked why they had done something this cruel. Her answer was cold. The whole class had agreed. Then he heard voices behind her. Classmates were laughing. Sora shouted that people were dead, but the laughter did not stop. His childhood friend told him the weak had no value. They had low status, no useful skills, and were only a burden. Someone even joked that if dying there really sent people home, then Sora and the others could go back first and relax with some good food. Then the call ended. Sora called again and again, but no one answered. His last hope was gone. Even then, he refused to give up. He remembered that monsters could not cross the kingdom's barrier. If he could just get back inside, he might survive. Thanks to that world's blessing, his body was much faster than it had ever been on Earth, so he forced himself to keep moving. Then a Furgle grabbed his leg. His body was yanked off the ground. He fired wildly and struggled, but more monsters swarmed him. They dragged him down and slammed him into the earth again and again. His leg twisted badly. His thoughts started to blur. The monsters circled him like children playing with a broken toy. Fear swallowed him whole. He had been dragged into another world, lied to, abandoned, and thrown forward to die for strangers. He had no proof that death would truly send him home. All he knew was that the pain was real, and he did not want to die there. He begged for help. A kick sent him rolling. Something cracked inside his body. The monsters closed in slowly, enjoying his fear. He screamed at them to stay back, but they kept coming. Then they tore into him. The pain became too much to understand. Even that pain slowly faded. He only heard the monsters and the awful sound of his own end. With the last of his fading mind, Sora made one promise. He would never forgive them. Then Sora died. Right before everything went dark, he heard a voice. He had gained a skill. Return by death. It all happened 2 weeks ago. Sora opened his eyes inside the class trip bus. Outside the window, red mountains stretched into the distance. His classmates were chatting, playing games, and enjoying the ride to the airport. It was the autumn of his second year in high school. Sora alone felt out of place. Before the new school year, he had been injured in a traffic accident and missed a long stretch of class. Even after coming back, he never fully fit in. He had hoped the trip might change that, but it had not. Then someone noticed something strange outside. Sora looked up and froze. A creature was charging toward the bus. Its body was gray and heavy like a hippo's hide. It had long arms, no eyes, no nose, and a face made almost entirely of mouth. A second later, the bus was hit. The whole vehicle shook violently. Students screamed as it rocked hard from side to side. When it finally stopped, everyone was stunned, but mostly unharmed. Sora had only hit his head on the seat in front of him. At first, they thought it was just an accident. Then, they realized the driver was gone. Someone shouted for everyone to look outside. The bus was no longer on a road. It stood inside a massive room, far larger than a school gym. Strange patterns covered the floor. Swords and staffs were placed around the chamber. Then several men in black robes approached. One dependable boy from the class stepped off the bus and tried to speak with them calmly. He explained that the class had been in an accident and did not know where they were. The robed men became overjoyed and called them heroes. That shocked everyone. Then a young woman appeared. Her golden hair, green eyes, and calm presence made the entire room fall silent. She introduced herself as Rose, the queen of the kingdom. She explained that the students had been summoned from another world. Every 100 years, the mist barrier around the kingdom weakened. When that happened, demons began their invasion. Their goal was to destroy the holy swords that supported the barrier and wipe out everyone inside. The people of that world could not properly fight outside the barrier, so they needed help from outsiders. Summoned people received blessings, fast growth, and unique skills. Rose told them to close their eyes and check their status. Many students did. Sora did not trust the situation enough to relax. Still, after seeing the others confirm it, he checked his own status too. The result made him decide one thing immediately: he would not fight. The class representative kept questioning Rose carefully. He asked whether anyone could go home right away. Rose said no. The connection between worlds would remain unstable for about 6 months. Until then, returning was impossible. Still, she promised them food, shelter, money, and freedom to live safely in the kingdom. He then asked whether students who did not want to fight would be forced into battle. Rose said no. Only volunteers would fight. That answer relieved many of the quieter students. Then he asked why the Holy Grail, the kingdom's sacred treasure, could not simply wipe out the demons if it was powerful enough to grant wishes. Rose answered that it had limits. Summoning the class had already weakened it, and it would need 6 months to recover. Finally, he asked the most important question: what would happen if someone died in that world? Rose smiled and said their souls would simply return to their original world. There would be no lasting harm. That answer changed the mood completely. And just like that, their school trip became life in another world. Sora was taken to a room inside the castle. It was far better than the hotel room he had expected for the trip. After checking the room once, he fell onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. He had already looked outside. The city was real. It was not some staged attraction. The castle was enormous. The streets were lined with brick buildings, and people were living normal lives beyond the walls. The mist barrier surrounded the nation and hid the far distance. At that point, Sora had no choice but to accept it. They really had been transferred to another world. As he lay there, he thought about the class. Some students were already excitedly testing their new powers. Some produced fire, some used ice, others summoned familiars. Sora had wanted to join them, but he could not. He had no special skill at all. From what he saw, the class quickly split into 4 sides. The first group wanted to fight. These were the athletic and confident students who liked their new strength. The second group opposed fighting. A serious girl from the literature club stood at the center of that side. They wanted to go home and believed none of this should have happened. The third group chose to wait and judge the situation more carefully. The class representative led them. Then there was the last group. It was not even a real group, just the leftovers. Sora, a truant girl who barely came to school, and a silver-haired delinquent who fit in nowhere else. Even in another world, the outsiders stayed outsiders. Rose had given them money, clothes, freedom to move around, and training support if they wanted it. She had also announced one more detail. The first demon attack would come in exactly 1 week. That thought sat heavily in Sora's chest. He checked his phone. The clock still worked, but there was no network. Since he did not want to waste the battery, he turned it off and went to sleep. The next morning, the whole class gathered in the dining hall to discuss what to do. The serious girl argued that even if they disagreed about fighting, they still needed a plan. That sounded reasonable, so everyone ended up sharing their statuses and skills. Sora knew people could lie. No one else could see another person's real status. Still, he had no reason to pretend. The result was humiliating. His status was the worst in class. Even with the world's blessing, his numbers were terrible. Compared to the others, he was weak in almost every area. His strength and durability were both rank G, and he had no skill. Only 3 students lacked skills entirely: Sora, the truant girl, Lily, and the silver-haired delinquent, George. The leftovers were also the failures. One loud boy mocked him openly. He laughed that Sora had no talent in the old world and still had none in the new one. Another student tried to defend him, but the teasing only got worse. Soon the room filled with pity, contempt, and quiet amusement. Sora forced a smile and stepped back. He was used to it. The athlete who had been most eager to fight kept picking at him, saying people like Sora were background characters no matter where they went. He even threw an empty cup at him and told him that if he could not fight, he could at least serve tea. A few others copied him. Sora still held himself back. He knew he would be a burden in battle. More importantly, Rose's promise of one wish still mattered to him. There was something he wanted badly enough to endure the humiliation. So, he quietly agreed to fetch the tea. That only seemed to annoy the boy more. The meeting ended without solving much. The class had shared their abilities, but no real plan had formed. The first invasion was only a week away, and the class was already splitting apart. Sora left the hall feeling more uneasy than before. With nothing else to do, he decided to walk around the city. On the way, he ran into the most popular girl in class. She smiled brightly and said she had also wanted to look around town. Then, to Sora's surprise, she invited him to come with her. The girl was Kaya. As they walked together, she lightly teased Sora about his awful status. He answered with a weak smile and acted like it did not bother him. He said he had never been the kind of person who stood out. Kaya did not agree. Rose had said their status and skills could still grow. In a world like that, anything could happen. She also added that Sora was not as invisible as he believed. When he asked what she meant, she only smiled and left it there. Sora had known Kaya since childhood. They had only been close when they were very young, and he had always assumed she had forgotten those days. Even so, he had quietly liked her for a long time. That made the walk feel special. The city itself was beautiful. Red brick buildings lined the streets, and the stone roads were clean and wide. The barrier's mist dimmed the sky, but the air was comfortable. Kaya joked that the town felt like an amusement park, trying to copy medieval Europe. Sora admitted he had thought the same thing, and she happily said that meant they matched. At a food stall, Kaya bought grilled skewers for both of them. He tried to pay her back, but she refused and treated it casually. Even that was enough to make him flustered. As they kept walking, Kaya finally admitted what had really been on her mind. She was afraid to fight. Her status was high, but that did not change the fact that the enemy was still unknown. No one knew how strong the demons really were, how many monsters they would bring, or how terrible real battle would feel. To show how abnormal their new bodies were, she ran across a grassy patch and jumped. She moved faster than any athlete Sora had ever seen and cleared several meters with ease. Sora could only stare. Back on Earth, he had been stronger and faster than her. In that world, he was nowhere near her level. They spoke again about Rose's explanation. There would be 5 invasions total. Once every month, a demon commander would appear with a group of Fergals and try to destroy one of the holy swords, protecting the barrier. Kaya admitted that she did not fully trust Rose. It was not because of Rose's looks. She simply felt the whole story was too neat. The topic later shifted to going home. Sora admitted he was not sure what he wanted yet. His status was terrible, and the class had already made their view of him clear. Still, life in that world had not been all bad. He had good food, a nice room, spending money, and a peaceful city around him. If he ignored the danger hanging over everything, Kaya was more certain. She wanted to go home as soon as possible. Then she revealed a secret. She was a VTuber, and her channel had only recently started doing well. If she disappeared for half a year, everything she had built might collapse. That was one reason she was considering fighting, even though she was scared. Then she joked that if Rose's promise was real, she could return home rich and stream forever. They both laughed. As they walked, Sora noticed something strange. The first invasion would arrive in only 6 days, and if the class failed, the kingdom was supposed to be destroyed. Yet the city did not feel desperate. People were not panicking. Either they trusted the summoned students a great deal, or something else was happening behind the scenes. Kaya noticed he had gone quiet and asked what was wrong. Sora finally asked the question that had been on his mind. Why had she chosen to spend time with him at all? She was popular. In a situation like that, it would have made more sense for her to stay close to strong people like Masa or Sean. Instead, she had chosen him. Kaya answered simply. She said Sora had always been the type to carry everything by himself. He had been like that, even as a child. She thought he might be doing the same thing again, so she wanted him to know he could rely on her if he needed to. After all, they were childhood friends. That answer hit Sora hard. He had really believed she had forgotten, but she had remembered. They returned to the castle side by side, and Sora found himself thinking that Kaya truly was a kind girl. 6 days passed. The first invasion would begin the next day. According to Rose, the first of the 5 demon commanders was always the weakest. During the invasion 100 years earlier, that enemy had been defeated by only 3 people. This time, there were 31 summoned students, so Sora wanted to believe they could not lose. Still, he understood one thing clearly. Someone with his status had no place on the front line. Because the invasion was close, the class received combat training from the captain of the knights, Grand. He was a tall, broad man with a beard and the presence of a veteran soldier. He told the class that their raw physical power already surpassed his own. What they lacked was experience. Then he threw a black cloth over himself and declared that he would act as the demon. At first, it looked silly. Once the training started, no one laughed. Even with the cloth over his head, Gran moved with sharp speed and perfect control. He attacked hard, dodged well, and never lost balance. He was completely serious. Sora had no one else to join, so he teamed up with the other leftovers, Lily and George. They were defeated almost instantly. Still, Sora soon realized they were not the only ones struggling. Even the stronger students had trouble against Grand. Fire, ice, and all kinds of skills flew at him, but he kept slipping through them with timing and technique. His skill made up for the gap in raw power. Watching him, Kaya quietly wondered why a man like Grand could not simply fight on the front lines himself. Sora had thought the same thing. If the kingdom already had warriors like him, why did they need summoned students at all? The answer seemed to be the same as before. People born in that world could not properly fight outside the barrier. Sora also realized something else. If the class kept growing at that pace, they would soon surpass even Grand. Their bodies and abilities were far too abnormal. After several rounds, Masa and his group finally managed to take Grand down. Rose arrived just in time to see it happen. Masa and the others celebrated loudly and kept showing off afterward. They were full of confidence. Sora could only watch and feel even smaller. Then Masa looked at him. With a mocking grin, he called Sora over and said he should train too. He made it sound reasonable. Even weak people might need to fight someday, so skipping practice would only lead to regret. Under the eyes of the whole class, Sora could not refuse. What followed was was not training. Masa said he would not even use his skill, as if that made it fair. Then he beat Sora around anyway. After that, Masa's followers joined in. Even some quieter students took part. One after another, Sora was forced into more fights until he became little more than a target. It was obvious what they were doing. Before the real battle, they wanted to crush the weakest person there and use him to boost their own confidence. Later, someone healed his injuries, but his body still ached long after. As Sora walked down the hall toward the dining room, he kept thinking about Masa. The boy had picked on him even before they came to that world. Sora still did not know why. Then Sean approached him. Sean checked on his condition and gave him one possible answer. He believed Masa was jealous. A few days earlier, Sora had gone into town with Kaya, and Masa had apparently liked her since middle school. Sean also warned Sora not to trust Kaya too easily. He stopped there and did not explain further, as if he had almost said too much. Then he spoke more honestly about the invasion. He admitted that he still did not truly agree with the class fighting, but the mood had already gone too far. Backing out now no longer felt possible. Still, he gave Sora one small relief. He said he had already spoken up so that students with very low status, especially Sora, would not need to stand at the front. People like Masa could handle that part. Then Sean made a stupid joke. If Rose really granted any wish after victory, he might ask her to turn Masa into a pig. It was childish, but it made Sora laugh. Later, everyone ate dinner together. Even then, something felt off. The class seemed to avoid Sora more than usual. It almost felt like some quiet agreement had formed around him while he was not looking. Then the night passed. Morning came. On the day of the invasion, Rose stood before the students with a grave expression and sent them out to battle. The first real battle began in the throne room. Rose gave the class a final speech, but Sora barely heard it. He knew she was trying to encourage them, yet that changed nothing. She would not be the one standing outside the barrier with monsters closing in. The key to the class's strategy was Kaya's skill, Gate of Transfer. She could open portals to places she chose, though long-distance use drained a huge amount of mana. Because of that, the entire battle plan depended on her. The mist barrier still surrounded the kingdom, even in its weakened state. Demons could not simply enter the city. To break the barrier, they first had to destroy the 4 holy swords placed in the 4 directions outside the nation. Kaya had shown the class those swords earlier. Sora had been shocked by how poorly protected they looked. They were not hidden deep underground or sealed behind giant walls. They were simply fixed into the ground outside. For objects that important, it looked reckless. But the locals had no better choice. Since the people of that world could not safely act outside the barrier, there was only so much they could do. Even Rose did not know who had first placed the swords there. At least there was one small relief. If even one holy sword remained, the Holy Grail could restore the others later. That meant the class did not need to defend all 4 at any cost. They only had to keep one standing and defeat the invading demon commander before the battle collapsed completely. According to Rose, each invasion brought only one demon commander at a time. The first one would come from the south with a pack of Fergals. The monsters were dangerous, but the true threat was the commander. If that leader fell, the invasion would end, and another attack would not come until the next month. So the class split into 2 main roles. One group would defend the holy swords near the outer wall. The other would move more directly against the demon commander. A few students were allowed to stay behind inside the barrier because they were too frightened to fight. They were 3 quiet girls. Sora honestly wanted to be with them, but the class had already given him another role. The night before, Kaya had explained it. Sora, Lily, and George would serve as messengers. They would stay near the middle of the battlefield in a safer position and watch how things developed. If Masa's forward group got into real danger, they were supposed to call Kaya immediately. If there was still time, she could open a portal and pull people back before it became fatal. Sora had asked the obvious question. Why was Kaya not doing that herself? Her answer made sense. She had to spend a huge amount of mana sending everyone into position first. After that, she needed to stay inside the barrier and recover. If she exposed herself too soon and got taken out, the entire rescue plan would fail. Then she had shown him the reason the messenger role could work at all. Phones still handled voice calls in that world. There was no signal, no internet, and no messages, but calls somehow connected. Because of that, the whole class had exchanged numbers. Sora had quietly liked that more than he expected. Even something that small made him feel a little less cut off. Still, Kaya looked worried when she gave him the job. Sora tried to joke that the weakest student in class was not much help anyway. Instead of laughing, she suddenly asked if he liked anyone. Then she quickly stopped herself and said it sounded too much like the kind of thing people said right before something went wrong. To cover it, she smiled and said they should both survive and eat delicious food together after the battle. That memory stayed with him now. Only minutes remained before the invasion. His heart was beating so hard it hurt, but when he looked around, he saw the same fear on the faces of the others. Even Masa, who usually acted fearless, could not sit still. Strangely, that helped. Sora was not the only one afraid. Then Sean came over. Sean looked worse than nervous. He looked like someone trapped between choices. He admitted he was tense too, then started to say something more. Sora could tell there was something important behind those words. But before Sean could finish, Masa called him away. A few moments later, Kaya opened the gate for Sora's group. She told them to be careful. Sora checked the gear Rose had given him, steadied himself, and stepped through the portal with Lily and George. That was how Sora entered his first battlefield. The gate closed behind them, and Kaya's cheerful voice vanished into the mist. The instant it happened, Sora felt something was wrong. The air felt familiar. The ground felt familiar. Even the silence felt wrong, as if he had stood there before. He stopped without meaning to. George snapped at him to move. Lily stood nearby, as quiet as ever, and eyes distant. Sora apologized and hurried after them. They were supposed to stay away from the front and observe from a safe position, but the more Sora looked around, the less that story made sense. Through the mist, he could already see shapes moving. Then George saw them too and shouted. A huge pack of Fergals was already far too close. There were hundreds of them, and they were nearly on top of the group. That was when Sora understood. They had been lied to. A sharp memory flashed through his mind. A ringing phone. Kaya's calm voice. The cold truth. The weak were not needed. They had been thrown away. A chill ran through him. He told the other two to run. George said they should call Kaya and get pulled back. Sora cut him off at once. If George wanted to try, he could. But Sora already knew the call would fail. They had been sacrificed. George checked anyway. The call did not connect. Lily finally reacted. The color drained from her face. Sora could not fully explain how he knew what was happening, but the terror in his chest told him the answer was right. If they stayed there, they would die. So he ran. At first, he thought about heading for the wall. Then, another strange memory hit him. That path would only trap him. He rejected it and searched for somewhere else. Through the mist, he saw a forest. That had to be the answer. If they could vanish into the trees, maybe they could survive. The Fergals should be focused on the holy sword, not on them. Sora wanted to believe that. George and Lily followed once they accepted no rescue was coming. Sora explained his idea while running. They could not outrun the monsters in open ground, but in the forest they might break sight and slip away. For one brief moment, it felt possible. Then, Lily's arm was cut off in a single blow. Everything collapsed at once. A Fergal had reached them much faster than Sora expected. George tried to swing his sword, but the attack was clumsy, and the monster avoided it easily. Sora shouted at him to stop and run. Lily was already finished. If they stayed, all three would die. Then more shapes appeared through the mist. They were surrounded. Sora ran into the forest anyway. He ran because nothing else remained. He ran until a Fergal caught his leg, dragged him down, and tore him apart while he screamed. Then he died, and in the next instant, he was back. Kaya's voice sounded behind him again. The gate closed again. The battlefield reset again. Sora froze. He had died. He knew it. The pain had been real. The fear had been real. Yet he was standing there again, at the exact same point. He threw up on the spot. Then he ran again and died again. He tried different paths. He tried the wall. He tried the forest. He tried warning the others sooner. Nothing changed. Every route ended the same way. He was caught, crushed, torn apart, and returned to the instant after Kaya's gate closed. After nearly 10 deaths, he finally accepted the truth. Dying would not let him escape. Death only reset him. When he checked his status, he found a new skill. Return by death. It was a cruel power. If it had sent him back just a little earlier, before he stepped through the gate, he could have escaped the trap completely, but it did not. It brought him back to the same point every time, as if the world itself was forcing him to stay on that battlefield. Sora hated pain. He hated fear. He hated that world. But no matter how much he screamed, dying would not free him. That left him with only one answer. He would fight. He would survive. And when he survived, he would make the classmates who threw him away feel the same fear he had suffered again and again. As Sora faced the Fergals over and over, he remembered something from childhood. Once, he had ignored his grandfather's warning and wandered alone into the mountains. There, he came face to face with a bear. He knew the basic rules. Do not run. Keep eye contact. Back away slowly. Protect your neck if it attacks. None of that knowledge helped. He had been too scared to move. The bear eventually left, but Sora stayed frozen long after it was gone. That day taught him something simple. Knowing what to do meant nothing if fear locked the body in place. That was exactly what was happening now, so he changed his goal. He stopped trying to win right away. First, he needed to get used to fear. He forced his shaking body toward the Fergals instead of away from them. Rose had allowed every student to choose a weapon, and Sora had picked a handgun because he feared close combat. The gun turned his mana into bullets. It was weak, but it used so little mana that even Sora could fire it for a long time. At first, that meant nothing. He missed every shot. In training, he had at least landed a few hits. On the real battlefield, his hands would not obey him. The noise, pressure, and sight of the monsters ruined his aim. He charged in, fired wildly, and died. Then he did it again and again. After around 20 deaths, He finally admitted how stupid that approach was, so he put the gun away. Then, he started watching. He crouched low and studied the monsters with empty hands. He stopped focusing on killing them and started focusing on movement. One swing, one grab, one step. He watched until patterns began to appear. Soon he could tell what a Fergal was about to do, but that still did not mean his body would move in time. He died again and again because of that gap. He died so many times that the number stopped mattering. Then one day, something inside him finally changed. That change became two new skills: fear, resistance; pain, resistance. From there, his progress sped up. Every death gave him more information. Every reset let him test a better step, a cleaner turn. Eventually, he could avoid Fergal attacks without thinking through each motion. That earned him two more skills: battle awareness, body control. Only then did he return to the handgun. He chose a single Fergal and focused on just that one. He fired while moving. Most shots still missed. He kept going anyway. At last, one monster stopped moving and broke apart into black dust. He had killed his first Fergal. That earned him one more skill: shooting. It had taken him an absurd amount of effort just to kill one monster. Sora took that as proof that he had no natural talent for battle. But by then, talent had started to matter less. He had time, as much time as he needed. Sora stopped seeing them as one identical mass. They had differences. Some were larger, some were faster, but they also shared one major weakness. A small red point appeared at the center of the forehead in the instant they attacked. If Sora hit that point at the right time, even his weak handgun could kill them in one shot. That discovery changed everything. He had no idea how many deaths it took to notice it. 50 or a few hundred. By then, he also understood return by death much better. The skill carried over his memory and the skills he gained. It did not carry over physical growth. Every loop started with the same weak body. He began each run with old experience, but not with better base stats. Even so, it was enough. Now he could handle dozens of Fergals by himself. For the first time, he managed to keep George and Lily alive long enough for the three of them to rest behind a large rock. George stared at him in honest shock. He said Sora had saved his life and admitted he had badly underestimated him. Sora brushed it aside, but George kept talking. He could not understand why the others still had not come to help. Sora had the same question. The class had clearly thrown the three of them out as test pieces. But why keep watching after enough time had passed? The only explanation Sora could imagine was that they were still waiting to see the real demon commander before risking their main force. George said that when they returned, he wanted to punch every one of them. Sora said nothing. A punch would never be enough. Then, George asked the obvious question. If Sora had really been the weakest in class, none of this made sense. Had he lied about his skills and status? Sora already knew the truth would sound insane. No one could understand return by death unless they lived it. So he lied and said he had hidden some extra skills as a last resort. George accepted that far too easily. In fact, he looked impressed. He said Sora sounded like the kind of hidden trump card that appeared in fantasy stories. That led to a much softer conversation than Sora expected. George admitted he had always loved reincarnation and fantasy novels. His room back home was apparently full of books and manga. Sora admitted he was similar. On his days off, he could spend an entire day watching anime. For the first time, the two actually got along. Then Lily quietly reached for Sora's arm. At first, he thought she only wanted his attention. Instead, she touched a wound he had ignored. The injury closed right in front of him. That was her hidden skill. She could heal. Sora thanked her. George looked annoyed that he alone seemed to have no skill at all. Sora pointed out that his own basic stats were still terrible. That part was true. No matter how skilled he became, every loop still started from the same weak body. George did not care. He said Sora was strong anyway, and that the class had completely failed to see his value. Then George asked for something unexpected. If they survived, he wanted Sora to train him. Lily quietly said she wanted the same. Both of them spoke as if there would be an after, as if survival was real, as if the three of them would sit together later and improve together. That simple faith hit Sora harder than he expected. After so many loops, part of him had started feeling as if the battle would never end. But hearing them talk about the future made him want that future to exist. Sora agreed. He joked that before any training, he wanted a huge meal. George liked the idea. Lily said she wanted bread, so the three of them kept talking. That was when Sora made a promise to himself. He would not let them die. If he had to repeat the battlefield forever, then he would keep repeating it until he found a path where both of them survived. Then a voice broke the moment. It was calm, soft, and completely wrong for a battlefield. A man stood nearby in clothes, close to traditional Japanese wear. He said, 3 people defeating so many Fergals was impressive. Then he declared that they were worthy of meeting him in battle. This was the demon commander, Vera. George challenged him without understanding the gap between them. In the next instant, Vera moved. He was too fast to follow. George was cut down in a single stroke before he could even cry out. Lily died just as quickly. Sora moved on pure instinct and barely made distance. Vera was on another level. He was faster, cleaner, and deadlier than anything Sora had faced. Bullets that worked on monsters meant almost nothing to him. He slipped past some with tiny movements and knocked others aside with his blade. When Vera went for his neck, Sora twisted aside at the last moment and escaped by inches. That near dodge finally made the demon take real interest in him. Vera remarked that Sora alone might be worth cutting down. Sora answered with more gunfire and one clear decision. No matter how many times it took, he would kill Vera. His blade cut through rock like paper. One clean hit would end the fight immediately. Still, Sora did not panic. By then, he had reached the point where he could read movement before it fully happened. If he saw the setup early enough, he could dodge, so he fired his handgun in short bursts. When the danger rose too high, he shattered a nearby rock to block Vera's sight and slipped into the trees. From cover, Sora kept firing. Shot after shot missed, but that did not matter. The more he watched Vera move, the more clearly the pattern formed. Sora found a tiny opening and fired a round straight into Vera's temple. It did nothing. It was as if an invisible layer covered Vera's whole body. Vera even thanked Sora for giving him an entertaining fight. Then, he calmly turned his back. Sora thought he was safe at that distance. He was wrong. In the next instant, Sora's view tilted. Only after he saw red color spreading across the ground did he understand he had already been cut. Vera had launched a slash from several meters away. Then he died. After that, he fought Vera again and again. The only place Sora could even try to compete was skill, but Vera was a veteran there too. Every time Sora adapted, Vera adapted back. His handgun was too weak. In other loops, he tried George's sword and Lily's bow, but nothing changed. If the weapon could not break through, then all the technique in the world meant nothing. He needed something with real power. He even tried fleeing all the way back to the kingdom once. The mist blocked him. He tried circling around the battlefield. The mist blocked him again. It felt like a locked game event. Until Vera died, the stage itself would not let him move on. He could keep George and Lily alive until the commander arrived, but that growth came with a cost. Every time he returned to the start, he felt a little less human. George even said his eyes looked like a monster's. Sora did not care. He had stopped worrying about how he looked a long time ago. During one quiet break, he asked Lily a strange question. He framed it like a game problem. If there was an enemy no amount of leveling could beat, then what was the answer? Lily took the question seriously. In RPGs, she said, one answer was buffs and debuffs. In action games, the answer was better skill. But if the damage still stayed too low after all that, then it might simply be a forced loss. That answer made Sora smile bitterly. It fit Vera too well. But Lily was not finished. She remembered old games where even impossible bosses could sometimes be beaten by stealing the enemy's special weapon and using it against them. He grabbed Lily's hand and thanked her and told her she had finally shown him path to victory. She froze in surprise. Sora barely noticed. He already knew that loop would probably fail too. That conversation would disappear like all the others. When Vera gave his usual formal greeting, Sora vanished into the trees. He fired again from behind. 5 shots in a row from different angles. 2 landed, but Vera's invisible guard still held. Vera praised Sora's technique and mocked the handgun for being too weak. Sora agreed. Then he rushed in. When Vera turned and brought his sword down, he stopped just short, knocked the hilt aside with his knife, and fired at Vera's face from point-blank range to force a reaction. Vera pulled back. Sora used that moment and sent the sword flying out of his hand. He had done it. He stole Vera's blade. Even then, Sora did not rush to finish it. Vera was still dangerous without a weapon. Sora slipped back into the trees. Vera chased him almost at once and struck with a hand blow sharp enough to kill, but Sora already knew that move. He dodged with the smallest motion possible and cut Vera's right arm. The invisible guard stopped a full severing, but it was the first real injury Sora had ever given him. When Vera jumped back, Sora was already waiting where he knew the demon would land. This time, he cut the damaged arm off completely. That finally shook Vera. Now the demon praised him with real excitement. He said Sora was different from the useless heroes he had seen before. He even admitted that fear had started to rise inside him. Then Vera revealed his true form. Black wings burst from his back. His lost arm regenerated, and his face twisted into something fully demonic. The pressure around him changed instantly, but Sora had seen that too, many times. He did not wait for the transformation to finish. He knew there was a brief moment right after the change, when the mana in Vera's wings loosened. He also knew the demon's sword became stronger by feeding on its user's mana. So Sora poured almost all of his own mana into one perfect slash and cut off a wing before Vera could use it. For the first time, Vera screamed. That form's greatest threat was magic. The wings were the core of it. If Vera started using that power freely, the fight would become impossible. Sora had learned that through too many failed loops, so he kept pressing forward. Vera gathered mana into his remaining wing while attacking with his new claws. That left one side open. Sora cut off the left arm. Then Vera answered with a blade of pure mana. Sora had already memorized the timing and angle. He deflected it. Then Vera tried to take to the air. Sora knew that move too. The moment the demon rose, the mana flow in the second wing loosened again. Sora used that final opening and cut off the other wing as well. Vera crashed down helpless. He still tried to fight. He fired bursts of mana. He tried to crawl, turn, and lunge. None of it worked. After thousands of deaths, Sora knew every move before it came. The battle was already over. Sora stepped behind him and drove the stolen sword through his back and into his heart. That last strike drained the rest of Sora's mana, but it ended everything. As Vera looked up at him like Sora was the real monster, Sora finally gave his answer. "I'm just a loser." Then Vera broke apart into black dust. After more loops than he could count, Sora had finally killed a demon commander. The battlefield fell silent. The Fergals were gone too. On that point at least, Rose had told the truth. Once the commander died, the swarm vanished. By her logic, 4 more victories like this would be enough to earn any wish. But Sora could barely think about that. His mind was worn down to the edge. It felt like he had spent years on that battlefield. Even victory felt distant. Then he remembered George and Lily. He ran back to the rock where he had left them. What he found there nearly broke him. George was lying on the ground with a terrible wound across his stomach. Lily was desperately trying to heal him, her hands shaking as she pushed her skill to the limit. A leftover Fergal had reached them after all, and George had protected her. Sora told them to wait. Then he took Vera's sword and slashed himself without hesitation. But when he opened his eyes, he was not back at the old checkpoint. He was back right after Vera's death. For the first time since gaining Return by Death, Sora truly panicked. He killed himself again and again. Same result. The checkpoint had moved. No matter how many times he died, he returned only to the moment after Vera fell. That meant George could no longer be saved. The chance was already gone. Sora still ran back to the rock again and again. It never changed. That was when his self-control finally broke. He screamed at the world. He cursed the skill. He cursed the fact that after surviving all of that, he still could not save the one friend he had made in that hell. To George, Sora had only been a classmate thrown away beside him. But to Sora, George had become much more. He was the boy who loved fantasy novels, the boy with a cat at home and a younger sister, the boy who hated studying but still wanted to become a teacher someday, the boy who had promised they would share a huge meal after the battle. Sora begged him not to die. He cried harder than he had in a very long time. George, barely able to speak, told him something simple. He had always believed no one would be sad if he died. Seeing Sora cry for him did not feel bad. That only made Sora cry more. He told George they were friends. George looked shocked by that word. Then he smiled weakly. A moment later, Lily collapsed beside them. Her mana had finally run out. Even then, she had kept trying to save him until the very end. George noticed. He asked Sora to tell her he was sorry. He said she had been the one encouraging him while he was trembling. Then he asked for one last favor. If Sora made it back, he wanted him to hit the class once in his place. Sora promised. Only then did George finally relax, then faded into particles of light. Sora could only hope his soul really returned home, where he could sit with a novel and wait for the others. But that hope did not lessen the loss. Then a new gate opened behind him. Only now did the others arrive. Sora lifted the unconscious Lily onto his back. Grief slowly turned into something colder and darker. He swore he would never forgive any of them. Not the classmates who laughed and watched. Not the people of that world who called them heroes and used them like tools. Then he walked through the gate. The betrayal had started the day before the battle. After training ended, Masa looked at Sora with disgust. He had beaten him under the excuse of practice, and that only made him more irritated. If someone that weak somehow survived to the end, he would still receive the same reward as everyone else. Masa could not accept that. He was not the only one. Around the room, students laughed at Sora, George, and Lily. They mocked Sora's weakness. They laughed at how badly he fought. They talked as if the 3 of them were useless. But the truth was simple. They were scared. Mocking someone weaker made them feel safer. So Masa gave that fear a direction. He proposed using the 3 outcasts as test pieces. Kaya would send them to the very front with Gate of Transfer. Everyone else would stay back, observe, and learn how dangerous the enemy really was. If the 3 survived, the class gained information. If they died, then the class only lost dead weight. And since Rose claimed death would return them home, Masa argued there was nothing to feel guilty about. Mori objected on moral grounds. Masa shut her down at once by asking if she wanted to go first instead. She had no answer. Sean argued too, but even he failed to stop the idea. The more the others listened, the more the room fell silent. No one wanted to be the one sent to the front, and no one cared enough about Sora, George, or Lily to take their place. In the end, they all chose safety. Kaya did not defend Sora either. A girl with a far-sight skill agreed to project the 3 of them onto the white wall of the throne room so everyone could watch before entering battle themselves. Then the next day came. What appeared on that wall stunned them. The Fergals were far worse than anyone had imagined. Many of the students had pictured weak fantasy monsters. Instead, they saw horrible creatures that made their skin crawl, and against those creatures, the weakest boy in class moved like something unreal. Sora crossed the battlefield with precision so sharp it hardly looked human. He slipped past attacks by the smallest margin. He fired with impossible accuracy. He killed monsters one after another while dragging George and Lily away from danger as if he had already memorized the battlefield. No one in the room could explain it. Some began to wonder if Sora had been hiding his true strength from the start. Others thought he had lied about his status during the first meeting. Whatever the answer was, the timid boy they thought they knew no longer matched the figure on the wall. Then the image caught a glimpse of a man dressed like a samurai. The feed cut off at once. No one knew why. Maybe the girl ran out of mana. Maybe the enemy interfered. Maybe Sora himself somehow caused it. The silence afterward was worse than any answer. That silence soon turned into fear. Some students worried Sora had known about the betrayal all along. Others tried to laugh it off and claimed a simple apology would fix everything. Masa shouted the loudest. He insisted the monsters must have been weaker than expected. He said Sora could not possibly be that strong. The pathetic sparring the day before had been real. There was no way it had all been an act. Little by little, the room calmed down. Then Kaya made her choice. She had already realized Sora liked her, so if he truly was strong, she planned to switch sides first. She was ready to abandon the class if she had to. Better to stand beside the one holding the blade than with the crowd waiting to be punished by it. She opened a gate and stepped through. In her mind, this would be easy. She would sound worried. She would say she tried to stop the others. She would use the connection they built while walking through the city. A boy like Sora would forgive her if she played it right, but the moment she found him, she froze. Sora was walking toward her with Lily on his back. His eyes were red from crying. George was nowhere to be seen. Kaya still tried to speak and followed him back through the return gate. Once they entered the throne room, every eye turned towards Sora. No one dared step forward. Sora ignored them all. He laid Lily down gently in a corner and quietly asked her to wait a little longer. Then he stood again. The entire mood in the room changed. Masa tried to speak, but Kaya moved first. She rushed towards Sora and tried to explain herself. Sora did not let her finish. "Shut up, pest!" His sword flashed. No one even saw the draw. Kaya died in a single strike. For 1 second, the throne room froze. Then the screaming began. Sora raised Vera's sword, looked at the classmates who had thrown him away, and moved. The throne room filled with panic. Students looked at Sora as if he were the monster now. That only made his head ache more. To Sora, they were the real monsters. He still remembered their voices on the phone. He remembered how they laughed while he ran for his life. So he raised Vera's sword and began cutting them down. There was no hesitation left in him. Students who had once sat in the same classroom fell one after another. Sora felt nothing. Then Masa stepped forward. He shouted in rage, still unable to accept what was happening. Sora understood why. On paper, Masa should have had the advantage. Sora's basic status was still the worst in class, and most of his mana was gone after the fight with Vera. If the class had truly worked together, they might have made this difficult, but Masa was alone. That was not enough. Masa shouted about Kaya, and Sora answered without emotion. Yes, he had killed her. Her transfer skill was too dangerous. If she escaped, she would become a problem later. It was better to remove her first. That answer broke Masa completely. He rushed in with his sword and called down flames with one of his skills. Fire crashed towards Sora from above. Against Sora, it was far too slow. He stepped aside with ease. Masa's aim was ruined by panic, and his attacks only blocked the escape paths of the other students. Sora mocked him for trembling. Masa shouted that he was the chosen one, and Sora was nothing. Sora did not let him finish. He crossed the distance in an instant and cut him down. Masa vanished into light, just like the others. After that, the rest of the killing became almost mechanical. Some begged for mercy, some blamed Masa. He ignored all of it. He killed them one by one. In a way, it almost disappointed him. Most of them had better status than he did. Even now, Sora had little mana left. If they had stayed calm, worked together, and accepted pain, some of them might have made the fight hard, but they could not. Fear ruled them. At last, it was over. All 28 students who had betrayed him were gone. Only Sora, Lily, and George had been outside that count. George was already dead. Lily was unconscious. Sora stood in the ruined throne room and felt almost nothing. He had wanted revenge for so long. He had imagined rage, relief, satisfaction. Instead, there was only cold silence. So he turned away from the students and faced the queen. The castle guards did not stop him. That part mattered. He had just slaughtered the entire class, yet none of the knights rushed him. No one stepped in front of Rose. Rose herself did not even try to flee. That confirmed what Sora had suspected from the start. There was a secret here. No kingdom would summon fighters stronger than themselves from another world and make no plan for what happened after victory. If the students won and then tried to seize the Holy Grail by force, this nation should have been helpless. Yet no one here acted helpless. Rose remained calm. Sora stepped up to her, drew the stolen blade, and decided she would be the last one he killed. Rose asked him one simple question. Was he really going to kill her? She calmly said she had nothing to do with the class choosing to throw him away. Sora rejected that at once. The class's betrayal was only part of the problem. The kingdom itself had dragged them there. The kingdom had forced children from another world into battle. Rose gave the same answer as before. The kingdom was in danger. People inside the barrier could not fight outside it. They had no choice but to rely on summoned heroes. Sora called that nothing more than an excuse. A country that survived by sacrificing outsiders deserved to fall. He said the demons at least fought with their own hands. The people of the kingdom lived in safety, while others were sent out to die for them. Even the claim that death only returned the students home did not change anything. To Sora, that only proved how lightly Rose treated their lives. Rose stayed calm through all of it. She did not argue much. She only watched him with that same beautiful, unreadable face. So Sora attacked. Then Rose said one strange line. It was a shame. He was very strong, but he had never been a hero. The world went dark. When Sora opened his eyes, he was back in the throne room just after returning from the battlefield. Kaya was running toward him again, with the same fake worry on her face. The checkpoint had changed again. For a while, Sora kept repeating the same result. He killed Kaya, he killed Masa, he killed the rest of the class. He stood before Rose. He tried different timings and different attacks. It never mattered. Rose always said the same line, then darkness, then a reset. That was when Sora understood something important. Vera had been an enemy that could be beaten through effort. Rose was something worse. She felt like a broken rule built into the world itself. Sora could not even understand how she was killing him. There was no battle to study, no attack to dodge, no pattern to learn. Fighting her felt less like facing a boss and more like crashing into the limit of the world. So he changed targets. Instead of killing everyone again, he left one classmate alive to question. He chose Sean. Until now, Sean had usually died quietly. He did not beg. He did not insult Sora. Sora had never forgiven him, but he did think Sean might know more than the others. When Sora questioned him, Sean only apologized. He admitted he had failed. He admitted he had chosen his own safety over doing the right thing. He also confessed something else. He had lied about his status. He was much weaker than he claimed. In truth, fear had ruled him just like the others. Masa had started the plan, but the rest had accepted it because they were scared. As for Rose, Sean could only offer one useful thought. She always answered questions, but she was always hiding something deeper. That was all. It was not enough. So Sora made a new decision. He would not kill the class this time. Not yet. If Rose's power was still unknown, then it was smarter to keep the others alive. They could draw attention. They could be used later. And if Sora ever wanted revenge again, he could always kill them when it was useful. So instead of cutting them down, he beat them down. He punched Kaya before she could say another lie. He dropped Masa next. Then he went through the rest of the class one by one and hit them hard enough that no one could stand. Some tried to resist, but none of them could match him. By the end, they were all on the floor, injured, terrified, and finally aware of what he had become. Sora quietly told George that he had kept his promise. He had hit the class once in his place. Rose watched the whole thing without losing her smile. She even praised Sora's strength. This time, Sora answered politely. A different battle had begun. The next morning, Sora tested return by death again. The moment he woke up, he ended the loop himself. When he came back, he returned only a few seconds earlier, right after opening his eyes. That confirmed another rule. The checkpoint had updated during the night. Sora sat on the bed and thought it through. It felt less like a normal skill and more like an automatic save point. Maybe a major event changed it. He still did not know. He checked his status again. There were no new skills. Everything looked the same. That only gave him more questions. One of them was a mutation rate, ranked G. He still didn't understand what that meant. He also still did not know the full rules of return by death. He had died many times before he even realized what power he had gained. That difference bothered him. Still, he pushed the thought aside for now. He was starving. He got dressed and went to the dining hall. Several classmates were already there. The moment they saw him, they flinched and hurried out. Their injuries had been healed, but their fear had not. Sora felt no sympathy. One beating was nothing compared to what he had gone through. He did notice one thing. Sean had at least come to his room afterward to apologize. That did not erase anything, but it did make him slightly different from the rest. Masa, on the other hand, still looked useful in another way. He was loud, easy to provoke, and exactly the kind of fool Sora might use later against Rose. Then the strange headache came again. It was not strong enough to stop him, but it bothered him because he still did not know what caused it. Before he could think about it more, Lily appeared. She asked if he was getting food too. Sora said yes and suggested they eat together. Without thinking, he almost mentioned an old promise from another loop. Lily tilted her head in confusion, so he quickly covered it by saying he simply wanted to talk. She agreed. They sat down with a simple meal. She thanked him properly for saving her the day before. Sora tried to brush it off, but Lily quietly said that from her view, he had moved as if he already knew what was coming. Sora avoided that part. Lily did not press him. Instead, she admitted she had hidden things too, including her healing skill. Sora asked why she would keep something that useful secret. She answered with a question of her own. If he had really been that strong, then why had he acted weak? Sora said he did not trust people easily. Lily said she was the same. That small exchange meant more to Sora than he showed. Out of everyone still alive, Lily was the only one he truly trusted. She had stood beside him on the battlefield, even if she remembered only one path through it. She was quiet and guarded, but she was kind. He knew that much. After they finished eating, Lily disappeared for a moment and came back with 3 glasses of orange juice. She placed one in front of Sora, one in front of herself, and one in the empty seat beside them. She called it a late celebration for surviving. Sora understood at once. The 3rd glass was for George. They touched the glasses together. The sound rang softly over the table. Sora drank, and for the first time in a long while, felt properly alive. After that, he made one quiet request to Lily, held on to one quiet promise of his own, and then left the dining hall to see Rose again. At the same time, Kaya lay in her room, thinking about Sora. Her regret was not guilt. She did not feel bad for helping abandon him. What bothered her was something simpler. She had chosen the wrong side. She had always thought Sora was harmless, quiet, and easy to read. She had assumed he liked her too much to ever hurt her. Then he hit her without even blinking. Now she could not tell what in him had been real. The boy from childhood and the one from the throne room did not feel like the same person. Yet the more she tried to reject that thought, the more old memories with him kept coming back. That unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. So she shut her eyes and told herself it did not matter. When Sora asked to meet Rose, he was taken to a large and elegant room with almost no trouble. That alone told him something. He was allowed close to the queen without any real inspection and barely any guards. If Rose's hidden power did not exist, he could have killed her from that distance easily. Rose greeted him warmly and invited him to sit. A maid brought tea. Rose even offered him rewards before he asked for anything. Better weapons, stronger armor, servants, anything. She said someone as useful as Sora would surely stand at the center of future battles. Sora refused all of it. What he wanted was information. He asked about the kingdom's history, its culture, the reason for the war with the demons, whether other human countries existed, what skills and statuses really were, and what exactly the blessing on summoned people meant. Rose answered every question. That was the problem. She said the kingdom knew very little about the demons beyond old records and the repeated pattern of invasions. They did not know where the demons lived or what their true goal was. She said the Holy Grail allowed the kingdom to support its people even without trade beyond the barrier. She said the laws of the world gave blessings and skills to summoned outsiders, but she did not know the deeper reason. When Sora pressed her on how she could be sure dead heroes returned home, if nobody from the kingdom could verify it, Rose gave him a polished answer. She compared it to dropping a spoon and knowing it would fall. Some things were simply rules of the world. Sean had been right. Rose never refused to answer. She simply answered in ways that gave away nothing important. It felt less like a conversation and more like a system built long ago to guide confused, summoned fighters. So Sora stopped being polite. He asked directly what the kingdom had prepared in case summoned heroes ever turned against it. Then he pushed even harder and asked whether he would need to cut off one of Rose's fingers before she stopped dodging. Instead of getting angry or afraid, Rose laughed. She laughed hard, as if Sora had finally become interesting. Then she calmly said he could try if he wished. She even held out her hand and offered him a finger as if it meant nothing. That told Sora enough. Threatening her that way would not work. If she looked that comfortable, then whatever she was hiding ran far deeper than simple fear of pain. Sora stepped back from the bluff and said he had only been testing her. Rose accepted that easily. She told him that his soul looked distorted, almost as if the world itself was trying to reject him. Sora asked if she could really see souls. She said yes, and she said that was why she was queen. For a moment, he thought about resetting, but he chose not to. Rose had not rejected him. If anything, she seemed amused by him now. That interest might become useful, so he kept visiting her. Day after day, Sora returned to Rose's room, asked questions, listened, tested different angles, and watched how she responded. She still never revealed what he really wanted to know. But one thing became clear. Rose was enjoying the game between them. Then, with less than half a month left before the next demon attack, Sora finished one of those talks and started back toward his room. That was when Masa called out to him. Masa wore an ugly, stretched smile and asked if Sora planned to join the group training session that was about to begin. Sora accepted and returned to the same training ground where he had once been used as a target. This time, there were no knights watching. The class was quieter too. They were still training, but the mood had changed. Masa welcomed Sora with a fake smile. He acted as if the disaster on the battlefield had only happened because Sora hid his strength. Sora answered in the same calm tone and made one thing clear. If something like that happened again, he would not hold back. Then Masa called 5 boys forward. Sora had expected something smarter. He had even thought Masa might try something while he slept. Instead, Masa chose the most direct option possible. He wanted to crush Sora in front of everyone and prove the gap between them was not real. Sora looked at the 5 and almost sighed. If Masa had really understood the difference between them, he would have brought everyone. Even so, the 5 had improved. They were watching him properly now. They were ready to attack a human target seriously. That alone was progress. Sora finally understood why the Knight Captain had once covered himself with a black cloth during training. It made it easier for the students to attack without thinking too hard about the fact that they were hitting another person. Masa opened with fire magic. The attack was faster than before. The fireball was larger too. Sora shot through it with his handgun and slipped to the side. Then the second boy threw a stone and turned it into a giant golem. 2 others opened fire with larger guns to cut off Sora's movement. It was not a bad formation, but it was still too slow. Sora let the golem swing, moved into its blind angle, used its body as cover, and broke the rhythm of the 2 gunners with a burst from his handgun. Then he slipped through the opening and drove his fist into the golem user's stomach. The golem vanished the moment its summoner dropped. 1 down. Masa came in next with his greatsword. He was using body enhancement too, and his speed had improved a lot. but speed alone was not enough. Sora deflected the sword with his short knife instead of meeting it head-on, stepped inside the great sword's range, and forced Masa back. Then he turned and dropped the two gunners. That left Masa and the support boy. Only then did the support boy use his skill. He had been boosting Masa from the rear. With that support and Masa's own enhancement stacked together, Masa launched a strike that really was dangerous. He avoided the blow, moved in, put Masa down, and then dealt with the support boy to end the match. After that, Sora finally explained why he had changed. With Lily's help, he had been testing a method to raise his stats. He pushed his body to its limit, damaged it badly, then had Lily heal him. Repeating that enough times had worked, his strength and durability had risen from G to E, and his speed had climbed to D. Those numbers were still not amazing compared to the strongest students, but for him, they made a huge difference. Before Masa could start shouting, Sean stepped in and said the truth out loud. Masa had improved, but Sora had still been holding back. If Sora had used Vera's sword seriously from the start, the fight would have ended much faster. That changed the mood of the whole place. The students who had mocked Sora before now crowded around him and asked him to train them too. Their timing was obvious. The next invasion was close, and they wanted the strongest person on their side. Sora saw through all of it. He smiled anyway and agreed. He had things he wanted to test in the next battle, and for that, extra pieces on the board could be useful. Soon after, the day of the second invasion arrived. Rose sent them off with the same clear voice as before. The second war began. This time, Sora was not thrown away. He stood at the front with 11 other students considered useful in battle. Behind them, the class had been split into 3 groups. One would hold the front line, one would guard the holy swords. The last would stay inside the barrier and observe in case something went wrong. Masa stood nearby, and even he was trembling. It was his first real battle. Fear was natural. Then, the enemy appeared. The Fergals were different this time. They were tougher, faster, and harder to kill than before. The weak point Sora had once used on their foreheads was gone. The class opened with a barrage of magic anyway. Against the first wave from the last battle, that amount of power would have torn them apart. This time, it barely slowed them. The students panicked almost at once. Their spells were injuring the monsters, but not enough. If this continued, they would run out of mana before they won. Sora watched long enough to confirm the changes. Then he moved. He drew Vera's sword and rushed forward himself. The others stared for a moment, then snapped back to action when Sora started giving orders. He told them he would pull the monsters in and that they needed to stay spread out, support him from range, and make sure they did not let themselves get surrounded. Sora cut through the stronger Fergals one after another. Their patterns were still mostly the same. They were simply bigger, harder, and more stubborn. While he fought, another part of his mind stayed on the backup plan he had already started inside the castle. He had asked one student to handle a separate task away from the battlefield. It was only a backup, but it mattered. Then, the real enemy arrived. A blonde woman with black wings stepped out of the mist and introduced herself as Selvis. Her tone was playful, her presence was not. Sora had barely started measuring her when Masa suddenly turned and attacked him. Sora dodged, shocked only for a moment. Then he saw the same empty look in the eyes of several other students. Selvis's power was some kind of control skill. She could seize people and turn them on each other. She laughed and said she was looking forward to the tragedy they would create. Elsewhere in the castle, Mori was regretting everything. The day before, Sora had asked her to do something dangerous. He wanted her to steal the Holy Grail, or at least bring back the book kept beside it. He had become certain that the Grail was connected to Rose's hidden power. In past loops, he had tried many ways to reach it himself. He had killed guards, forced his way deeper into the castle, and tried threatening Rose through different routes. None of it worked. The underground door could not be broken, and Rose always appeared before he made real progress. But Mori had the right tools. She possessed unlock and stealth. Sora had spent many loops finding the exact words needed to move her. He appealed to the image she had of herself as the one who helped others. In the end, it worked. During the second invasion, while Rose's attention should have been on the battlefield, Mori slipped underground and opened the sealed door below the castle. The stairs felt wrong. They were spotless, silent, and cold in a way that made her skin crawl. At the bottom, she found the Holy Grail. It was a large white vessel with a faint, clear liquid inside. When she touched it, her fingers did not get wet. When she tried to lift it, it would not move at all. So she turned to the shelf beside it and found the book Sora had described. Inside were answers. The history of the war between humans and demons. The reason heroes were summoned from another world. The reason they received blessings and skills. The reason the demons kept invading the kingdom. Before Mori could fully understand it, Rose appeared behind her. Mori panicked and called Sora, but he never answered. Rose walked toward her with the same beautiful smile and gently said that this place was forbidden and that someone who entered it like this could no longer be called a hero. Then Mori vanished. She disappeared so completely that it felt as if she had never been there at all. Back on the battlefield, Sora slowly worked out Selvis's power. Her control seemed to begin through her eyes. Looking at them disturbed the mind. Full eye contact led to complete domination, but there was a short delay between being caught and being fully controlled. That delay was enough. As long as Sora could still move, he could end the loop before the control finished. There was another problem though. He still did not know why Selvis did not simply control everyone at once. Either there was a condition to her power, or she just enjoyed making allies kill each other. Not wanting to risk more confusion, Sora chose the simplest answer. He killed all 11 nearby students himself. Selvis looked genuinely puzzled by that. She asked if he really had no hesitation at all. Sora answered that he did not really know what the word comrade meant anymore. He questioned her too. He asked how old she really was and pointed out the contradiction in Rose's story. Rose had claimed heroes were summoned every 100 years. If demons had won those past battles, then the kingdom should have fallen long ago. If heroes had won, then demons like Selvis and Vera should already be dead. Something about the whole story still did not fit. Selvis gave him only one clear answer. The difference between demons and humans, she said, was the reason they fought. Then she drew a black staff. At that same moment, Sora's phone rang. He understood at once. Mori had failed. Even so, that still gave him useful information, so he accepted the loop as worthwhile. Then Selvis's gaze caught him fully, and he felt his thoughts begin to blur under her control. Before it could finish, Sora ended the loop himself. He understood one thing before the world reset. This battle would be even more troublesome than Vera's. Her control power centered on her eyes. Looking at them too long led to domination. There was a short delay before the control fully locked in, and that was the only reason Sora could survive. He still had enough time to reset before losing himself completely. Her other advantage was just as bad. She could fly from the start. She stayed high in the air, dropped lightning from above, and forced anyone trying to track her to risk eye contact. For Sora, it was a terrible matchup. He had very few strong, long-range options, and the other students were almost useless because they got controlled too quickly. So after enough loops, Sora stopped relying on them. He called Kaya in, ordered the front line to fall back, and fought alone. He could use the class later if needed. Right now, they only made the battle worse. That left him with one goal. He had to improve his fallen magic. Vera had used that art through his sword. Sora already had the skill, but only in a rough form. He had copied the basics through repeated observation. Now he had to turn that weak imitation into a real weapon. At first, he approached it like sword training. He imagined cutting the air. He imagined fast draws. He imagined mana flowing cleanly through the body and into the blade. None of it worked. Eventually, he realized he was thinking too neatly. Fallen magic did not feel proper or straight. It felt twisted. So he went back to watching the demons. Vera had used his wings as a core. Selvis had wings too. Sora did not. So he searched for another source. The answer was ugly, but it fit. It was the blood trace he had spilled over endless deaths. He cut his finger, smeared that mark onto Vera's sword, and swung. A slash flew. It only grazed Selvis's cheek, but that was enough. He had found the door. After that, the loops kept piling up. He refined the technique again and again. He learned how to compress his weak mana better. He learned how much of that blood trigger he actually needed. He learned how to shape the slash without wasting motion. Roughly 400 loops later, he had changed once more. By then, he could fight Selvis with his eyes closed. He no longer needed to look at her directly to read the battle. Selvis eventually lost patience, dropped lower, and tried to finish things more directly. Sora answered by cutting off one of her arms with a flying slash. That finally shook her. She rose higher and started preparing the same kind of final transformation Vera had once used. Sora had expected that too. He admitted to himself that what he was about to do felt a little embarrassing. Then he copied the demons and raised one hand toward the sky. The next instant, the battle was decided. Sora still did not know what the words meant. He did not even know whether the technique he had created truly belonged to the same system as the demon's final art. He had only studied, tested, and repeated until something finally took shape. Unlike Vera, Sora's body did not grow huge. Instead, he used magic to shape dark red wings from his own life force and turned those wings into the core of a much larger spell than anything he had used before. That was his true trump card. The slash that came from it looked like it cut the sky itself. A red-black blade of magic swallowed Selvis and ended the battle in one blow. Selvis hit the ground hard and could no longer rise. Sora, running on almost nothing, looked down at the broken demon and asked the one question that mattered most. Why did the demons keep invading that kingdom? She said they fought to stop the heroes from getting their wishes granted by the Holy Grail. Sora did not understand. Whatever wish a hero made should have meant nothing to the demons. Selvis only told him that he was not the one who got to decide that. Then she said she was tired and would leave the rest for another time. At that moment, Sora hesitated. Should he let her die? A second later, he chose something else. He ended the loop before Selvis fully passed away. When he opened his eyes, he was back at the moment just after Kaya's gate had closed. His guess had been right. The checkpoint had not updated yet. That meant one thing. As long as he died before Selvis fully disappeared, he could return to a point before her death. That gave him something he almost never had. A defeated enemy he could question again and again. So he did exactly that. he sent the class away. He cut through the Fergals. He fought Selvis, brought her to the edge of death, and questioned her over and over about the demons, about the monsters, about the heroes, about Rose. Selvis answered more than Rose ever did, but not in a clean way. Her words were slippery. They sounded important, yet never gave him the one clear answer he wanted. Worse, most of what she said did not directly clash with Rose's story. A darker idea came to him. What if Selvis and the other demons were not natives of that world either? What if they too were being called back again and again, just like heroes could be? That would explain how demons spoke as if they had fought heroes across long ages. But when Sora said that, Selvis rejected it more fiercely than anything else. She looked disgusted and told him never to compare them. He tried the question again in later loops. Her answer never changed, so he changed the question. What did Selvis herself want? This time, she smiled. Then she gave him the one answer he had not expected. She said she fought to dry up the Holy Grail. After that, she finally turned to ash and disappeared. That was how the second battle ended. Back in the throne room, Masa was irritated. Sora had forced him and the others away from the main battlefield. Masa hated that he had obeyed, but the truth was uglier than his pride. Part of him had also felt relieved. The Fergals were horrible. Even after training, he had not really wanted to face them head on. Around him, though, the mood was much lighter. Some of the girls watched Sora through the far sight wall, almost like they were watching a match. They said his face looked different now. They said he seemed calm and cool. Even Kaya could not stop staring. That only made Masa angrier. Then the far sight wall went blank. At first, nobody panicked. Most of them assumed Sora was still fine. If he were in real trouble, he would call. Instead, Kaya's phone rang. It was Sean. His voice was frantic. A huge number of Fergals had reached the Holy Sword group, and people were already going down. Kaya opened a gate at once. Masa grabbed the chance and rushed through with several others to help. Quietly, Kaya started wondering if Sora had somehow predicted this. A second battle began in Sora's absence. By the time Sora returned after defeating Selvis, the throne room was heavy and silent. Kaya explained what had happened. While Sora had been fighting the demon, one of the Holy Sword positions had come under attack. People died. One of the Holy Swords had been destroyed. Sora immediately looked at Rose. He knew he had not let a single Fergal slip past him. Sean, badly injured, explained the rest. The monsters had come in huge numbers. Masa and the others had helped, but it had still gone badly. In total, 6 students had died. Sora looked at Masa. Masa avoided his eyes. Sora said they would need new plans before the next battle. Rose stepped down from the throne and apologized. She insisted the demons were only supposed to invade from the south and claimed she did not understand what had happened. Masa shouted at her, but Rose's quiet pressure shut him down almost at once. Sora then asked to speak with her later. As Rose turned away, Sora made a decision. He still had a little mana left. Not enough for a full battle, but enough for one hidden strike. This time, he used an invisible slash from behind, moving faster than any normal person should have been able to react. Rose's head came off cleanly. For one brief instant, Sora thought he had finally done it. Then the world reset again. He was back at the moment, just after returning through Kaya's gate. Even that had failed. Sora ignored Kaya's voice and bit back a curse. The second battle had cost them heavily. 6 students had died while Sora was fighting Selvis. Mori was missing. On top of that, 2 quieter girls had vanished under strange conditions. The class had originally come to that world with 31 students. After George's death in the first battle and the new losses now, only 21 were left. Even if Sora could defeat the demon leaders himself, he could not be everywhere at once. Training the class more would help, but time was short, and Masa's group would never fully listen, so Sora considered another answer. Maybe it would be faster to learn some kind of summoning art or familiar magic, but there was no guarantee he had the talent for it. As he thought about that in the dining hall, Lily came over with more bread and sat across from him. She asked whether he was worried. Sora gave her a small excuse, and then asked about the class. He had told her to keep an eye on them while he dealt with Rose. Lily said there was no sign of any new plot. Most of them just seemed tired and shaken. He asked about the missing students too. Lily had no real answer. The people around them said the girls had simply been there one moment and gone the next. That was enough for Sora. He decided to check the underground chamber himself. He went to the sealed door below the castle and hit it with a concentrated slash. At first, it felt like nothing had happened. Then the door quietly broke apart. With his current magic, he had finally become strong enough to force his way in. He hurried down the stairs. Inside, he found the Holy Grail and the hidden books. The Grail was still a massive white vessel, partly filled with that strange liquid that felt wet without actually wetting the fingers. Even now, Sora could not lift it at all, so he turned to the books. Before he could read more than a few pages, Rose appeared. Sora put the book back and asked how she had found him so quickly. Rose only smiled. Sora accused her directly. He said he no longer believed the Grail would truly grant their wishes the way she claimed. He brought up Selvis's words and asked what it meant for the demons to want the Grail dried up. Rose answered that if Sora truly wished to know, she could explain the history of the Grail and that world. That was the opening Sora had been trying to force, so he listened. Rose began with the world itself. She said that world had once been far larger than Sora's. It had been filled with many races: elves, dwarves, lizard folk, and others. They fought for ages. Humans joined those wars too. In the end, everyone grew exhausted, so humanity prayed to a god. In answer, they received the Holy Grail and a blessing. The demons, she said, prayed elsewhere and received a curse instead. From that point on, every special power in the world came from one of two sources: blessing or curse. With the blessing, humanity grew strong and wiped out many other races. Then the war between humans and demons swallowed everything and ended in total ruin. Not defeat or victory, total extinction. Rose said the world had already ended long ago. All that remained were silence, the leftover blessing, and the leftover curse. Then, much later, the Grail and the wishes still lingering in the land brought humanity back. The demons came back too. That was the truth of the present age. Neither side was fully alive in the normal sense. Both were remnants. Humans were bound to the Grail. Demons were bound to the curse. That was why both sides kept fighting. They were made that way now. If that was true, why not fight inside the barrier where the people of the kingdom could survive? Rose gave him the answer. The people of the kingdom were no longer recognized by the god as true humans. They had been brought back by the Grail, but they no longer counted. Because of that, they received no blessing. That was why the Knight Captain, supposedly the strongest man in the kingdom, was still so weak compared to the summoned heroes. The barrier did not just keep demons out, it also kept the revived humans alive. They could not truly survive outside it. That was why heroes from other worlds were summoned. They were still real humans. The god recognized them and granted them blessings. Rose admitted that the visible form of those blessings, the status screens and skills, had been shaped a little so outsiders would understand them more easily. That explained the system. It did not make Sora hated any less. Then Rose said something even more important. To people from outside, that world was almost like a dream. Dying there meant waking up back home. But the Grail itself was different. The Grail alone was real. It was not part of the dream. And Rose, chosen by the Grail, was tied to the kingdom itself. If she died, the kingdom would collapse, and the power binding the heroes to that world would break as well. That was why killing her was meaningless. That was why Sora could never truly finish her the way he wanted. Rose touched his cheek with a hand so cold, it barely felt alive. Then, she finally spoke from what sounded like her real desire. She wanted the dream to continue. That was all. The demons were tired of it. She was not. 1,000,000 years would still not be enough for her. She wanted more life, more time, more of that false kingdom, and for that, she needed Sora to kill the remaining demon leaders. Sora did not believe every word without question. There were still things to test, but he no longer thought Rose was lying about everything either. The picture was finally becoming clearer, and that alone mattered. At last, Rose offered him her hand and invited him to tea. Sora hesitated for a moment. Then he took it, feeling like he had stepped even deeper into a bad dream. Even after hearing Rose's explanation, Sora still had doubts. Humans and demons had both died once, then returned through blessing and curse, and now repeated the same war forever. If that was true, then almost no one in that world could still be fully sane. Sora understood that too well. He had already started losing parts of himself after repeating a single battlefield so many times. Still, one thing would not leave his mind. Why had Rose chosen that moment to tell him the truth? If she was willing to explain so much, then there had been no reason to erase Mori. It almost felt like Rose had shown him one terrible truth to make him stop searching for something even worse. In the end, Sora forced himself to think simply. If Rose truly would send him home and grant his wish, then her secrets no longer mattered. If she would not, then only power mattered. So he stopped pushing against her openly. He trained. He trained himself, and he trained the class whenever it suited him. Then he kept winning. The third and fourth demon leaders fell. Sora's body changed again. He raised his strength, durability, and speed the same way as before. He even found a way to raise magic by pushing his mind to the edge and then recovering. Mutation rate still never changed. By the time the final battle arrived, only 8 classmates were left. Only one holy sword remained. Sora no longer cared. One more victory, and everything would end. He stepped through Kaya's gate and waited for the usual sound of the Fergals moving through the mist. Nothing came. Then the final demon appeared by herself. She was around Sora's size and wore a mask. At first glance, she looked more like a strange girl than a monster. Before Sora could even attack, she calmly told him one thing: he could not kill her. In the next instant, his consciousness was cut off. By then, Sora had become frighteningly strong. He had used every method he could think of. He had pushed his body past safety. He had broken himself again and again, then rebuilt himself stronger. He had even told the others how to do it. Not one of them truly followed him all the way. Even Masa, who loved to boast, could not force himself to cross that line. Then the masked demon's power struck. It felt too much like Rose's. No matter how strong Sora had become, it did not matter. The masked demon's ability ignored speed, skill, and stats. It simply shut him down before the fight could even begin. Sora did not panic. If the human side had the Holy Grail, then it made sense that the demon side might also have some abnormal power. That would explain why the war had lasted so long. Previous heroes might have been just as strong as Sora in their own ways and still failed because of powers like this. The masked demon then began speaking to him across repeated loops. She said his soul felt dark and heavy, as if he carried the sadness of the whole world alone. That made Sora stop and study her more carefully. Unlike Vera and Selvis, she looked almost fully human. No wings, just a masked girl standing there and talking as if she had endless time. When Sora asked whether she wanted the endless war to continue the way Rose did, she gave him a strange answer. She said she hated things that never changed. She was searching for something special, something that could clear the fog from the world. Hope, she said, only appeared inside absurdity. That changed Sora's thinking. Until then, every problem had been something to defeat, but Rose could not be beaten normally. This final demon could not be beaten normally either. So maybe the answer was not force. Maybe this was not a fight he was meant to clear like an action game. So in the next loop, Sora did not attack. He told her he had no wish to fight and asked whether she would talk to him instead. That was how a completely different kind of test began. At first, the talks felt almost ridiculous. The masked demon cheerfully spoke about chocolate, about how much she loved letting something sweet melt in her mouth while drinking bitter coffee. Sora answered awkwardly and tried to keep up. This masked demon felt warm, emotional, and changeable. She sounded more alive than the queen ever did. He tried to guide the conversation toward her power, the war, and the truth. Every time, he hit an invisible wall. Sooner or later, she would always say the same thing. Sora kept lying. Then she would kill him again. He could not tell what part of his words she hated. He could not tell what crossed the line. Then one day, she asked him a question instead. What did he want from the Holy Grail? Sora hesitated. Then he decided there was no reason to lie in that loop. It would vanish anyway. So he told her the truth. Before coming to that world, he had been in an accident. A truck had run the light. His older brother had pushed him aside and saved him. Sora survived with only minor injuries. His brother never woke up. That was the wish Sora had carried all this time. He wanted to save him. But even while saying it, Sora admitted the truth. He no longer believed in an easy, happy ending. Worse, he was starting to lose even the shape of the life he wanted back. His brother's face was becoming hard to remember. If he relaxed too much, he felt like he might even forget himself. The masked demon listened quietly. Then she said she was no longer sane either. She had broken long ago. The only way to keep moving had been to let go of the person she used to be. And yet she still could not abandon the war, because it was also the wish of someone important to her. When he asked about the difference between humans and demons, she gave him an answer he did not expect. There was no real difference. They had once been the same people. The only thing that separated them was who they prayed to. Then, after lightly scolding Sora for trying to jump ahead, she removed her mask. Sora had already suspected there might be a resemblance, but the reveal still shocked him. Her real name was Elena, and she was Rose's older sister. The eyes made it undeniable. They were the same bright green. Elena then told him her story. She and Rose had been born princesses of the same kingdom, but politics and war had split their lives apart. Elena was sent away to marry the prince of what would later become the Demon Kingdom. It was never truly her choice. She was a hostage, dressed up as a bride. Before she even reached that land, war broke out again. The prince died before meeting her. Elena fled, lost her place in the world, and eventually lost her life too. Her last wish had been simple. She only wanted her little sister to be happy. Then she woke up again, in the castle of the demons, as their queen. She did not know how it happened. She did not remember making any deal. She only knew that the demons believed she was special, a chosen voice of the devil, because she alone possessed a power no other demon had. Sora then asked the obvious question. If Elena had that kind of power, could she not end the war herself by destroying the final holy sword? Elena said she had already thought of that. Long ago, she went to see Rose. She offered to end the war if Rose truly wanted it to end. Rose refused. She would not let the dream die. Elena said Rose had always been strange, the kind of child who could play with the same toy forever and never get bored. Maybe that was all this had become to her now. One endless game. As for Elena herself, she said both her pain and her joy had already broken. If Rose wanted the war to continue, Elena could continue too. That left Sora with only one conclusion. If Elena would not step aside, then eventually he would have to kill her. Elena calmly reminded him that no hero before him had ever managed it. Sora answered, just as calmly, that he had no choice but to keep going. She said Sora was different from the others. His soul was damaged in the same way hers and Rose's were damaged. That was why she had chosen to speak with him at all. So Sora finally told her the truth. He had a special power too. He could return after death. He said his power resembled that world itself. If Elena's ability truly could not be overcome, then the war would simply stall forever. Elena listened and said Sora was deeply loved. He had no idea what she meant. Then Elena explained she was not usually the fifth demon. Most of the time, someone else handled that role. She only stepped in herself when she wanted a change of pace. That meant something important. There really had been heroes in the past who defeated all 5 demon leaders and reached the Holy Grail. The Grail was not holy, but its power was real. Then Elena held out her hand and made an offer. They should go to Rose together. If they did, Sora's wish might actually be granted. And with that, Elena smiled at him like a devil. Sora knew that taking Elena's hand would be a turning point. If he went with her now, then this path would likely become real. It would stop being something he could casually erase with return by death. It would also mean openly standing with a demon against Rose. He thought for a moment. There was no answer he could reach just by thinking. And Elena was too unpredictable. If he reset there, she might never make the same offer again. So he chose the only real option left. He took her hand. Elena smiled, snapped her fingers, and in the next instant, they were standing in the throne room. Rose did not look surprised. The remaining classmates were another story. They panicked at once, especially when they saw Sora standing beside a demon queen while still holding her hand. But Rose silenced all of them with a single command. One moment they were yelling, the next, they dropped like puppets with their strings cut. Rose greeted Elena like an old family member. Elena greeted her the same way. They did not look like enemy rulers at all. Then Elena made her request. She asked Rose to lend her the Holy Grail, so Sora's wish could be granted. Rose refused immediately. Not because she wanted to deny him, but because, according to her, the Grail was not yet full. It had limits. It could not act freely whenever someone wanted. And Sora's soul was far more exhausted than normal. The energy being spent on him was abnormal. Rose finally revealed that Sora had been useful in ways he didn't understand. Every time Return by Death activated, it forced the god side to spend power to preserve the granted wish that protected him, and Sora had repeated that miracle more times than anyone should have been able to imagine. Rose had wanted one thing for ages. She wanted to drag the god down. She hated being looked down on by a being that treated her world like a toy. She had endured that endless war while waiting for one true exception to appear. Sora was that exception. His impossible power had drained the god until it finally reached its limit. Then, the Holy Grail appeared. It shone with a light so intense it swallowed the room. Sora could not even keep his eyes open. When the light finally weakened, there was something there that barely looked alive anymore. It resembled a dry branch more than a divine being. Rose looked at it and laughed. Then she crushed it under her heel without hesitation. In the next instant, darkness swallowed Sora whole. Inside that darkness, Sora saw Rose's true beginning. She had been born a princess in a ruined world. Even as a child, she understood the truth. Her kingdom was dying. War, hunger, and loss were normal. So she prayed for one thing. She wanted the next world to be kinder. That wish never came true. The war only grew worse. Gods and devils handed people too much power, and the world collapsed into total ruin. Everything died. But just when it should have ended, the world started again, because the gods were not done playing. Rose understood that right away. To them, people were only toys. When a toy broke, they fixed it and started the game again. So she made her own choice. She would play by their rules and wait as long as it took. 10,000 years, 100,000, a million. She would wait until she found a way to strike back. Then Sora appeared. He was the exception none of them expected. He had burned through more power in one war than earlier heroes had spent across whole ages. And the reason was not divine kindness. It was love. At last, Sora learned the truth about Return by Death. His older brother had once been summoned to that world as a hero. He had defeated all 5 demon leaders and reached the Holy Grail. But instead of using the wish for himself, he asked for only one thing. He wished that his little brother would stay safe. That wish became Return by Death. That was why Sora had survived so much. Not because the god cared, because his brother had protected him first. Rose also showed him another rule. The Holy Grail recovered power whenever summoned heroes and demon leaders died. It would not be at full strength, but with enough deaths, it could grant another wish. That meant if the remaining classmates died, Sora's wish should go through. After revealing that, Rose admitted she was tired. Her revenge had already been achieved. She no longer wanted to stay awake. Sora called her selfish. Rose accepted that with a small smile. Then she faded into the darkness. When Sora opened his eyes, he was back in the throne room. Rose was gone. Elena was gone. Only the fallen classmates remained. Sora understood what he had to do next. Sora reached for his sword. If the remaining classmates had to die for the Grail to grant his wish, then he would do it. He no longer felt guilt over that. In earlier loops, he had already killed them countless times, but before he could move, Lily woke up. She sat up, looked around, and calmly said it looked like she had won. Then she explained, she had been hiding more than just healing magic. One of her hidden skills was Future Sight. It only showed short, broken pieces of the future, and it cost a great deal of mana, but it was enough to let her see certain endings before they came. Another skill let her make poison strong enough to kill people, even if it was not very useful against demons or monsters. That was how she had won. She had poisoned the remaining classmates before they could wake up. Sora asked if she also had a wish she wanted from the Grail. Lily said no. She did not want anything that badly. She only wanted to win the game. Then, Sora Sora asked about her final hidden skill. Lily asked whether he knew what mutation rate really meant. He did not, so she told him. When mutation rate rose past a certain point, a person stopped being human and became one of the monsters. The sudden attacks in impossible places, the strange extra Fergals, even some of the classmates who had vanished, all of it came from that hidden rule. The world had some unseen measure, almost like contribution. Once someone became unnecessary to the game, they were pushed toward becoming a monster. Mutation rate rose under that pressure. And Lily knew all that because her last hidden skill was Devil's Whisper. She could hear the devil's voice. That voice had told her things the others never knew. It had also shown her futures where Sora himself became a monster and killed everyone while the devil laughed. Sora went quiet. If the god was already dead, then even return by death might no longer be safe. If he changed too, then everything would end in the worst possible way, Lily said. In some futures, she herself killed Sora and won. The devil had shown her ways to do it, but she refused. She would not kill a friend just to win. Then she took out a small vial and drank it. Sora understood too late. She had already chosen her own ending. Lily told him to make the wish and go home. Then, when he got back, the three of them could play games together, Sora promised. He said they would spend a whole day playing, with snacks piled up around them. Lily smiled. It was a real smile. Then she thanked him for saving her in the first battle. A moment later, she disappeared into the light. At last, only Sora remained. He picked up the Holy Grail. This time, it was light enough to carry. Then a voice told him the game was not over yet. Sora turned and saw a figure sitting on the throne. Presence was completely different. This was the devil, and it had come to play one last game. The devil laughed and explained everything with shameless delight. Now only two players were left, Sora and itself. It did not want to be alone. It wanted a game. Then the grail vanished from Sora's hands and appeared in the devil's. The devil offered him two choices. He could use the grail to save his brother. If he did, then from that moment on, he would belong to the devil forever and become its endless toy. Or he could give up on the wish and return to his world alive. But if he chose that path, his brother would die. There was also a third option, and the devil mocked him with it. Sora could cut his own neck, and hope, return by death, still worked. Sora might have chosen the first path without hesitation. He would have endured anything if it meant saving his brother. He had promised Lily. He had also promised George, in his own way. He could not save one person by throwing away everything else and becoming the devil's toy forever. So, he made his choice. He refused every path the devil had offered. The devil stared at him for a second, then it laughed even harder. It threw the grail aside like a toy and said that if Sora wanted a game, then it would give him one. But this time, there would be no easy escape. Sora did not answer with words. He only drew his sword and raised one hand, calling up the blood-black power he had forged through endless battles. Then, the final fight began.